Hello! Today's video is about WorldZero tier. There are various characters in WorldZero, so if you are new to WorldZero or returning, you may be wondering which character is better. In WorldZero, there is already a simple character tier that is not related to performance. Today, I'd like to check out the tiers related to performance, not these tiers. Before I begin, the character performance tiers reflect my subjective views and the thoughts of some viewers. Therefore, I would appreciate it if you could look at this tier as a reference rather than 100% correct or incorrect. If you have any other opinions, feel free to leave a comment. First of all, before I show you the performance tier table, there is something you need to understand. There are a total of 15 characters in WorldZero, but the meaning of 0.5 was reflected in order to divide them more clearly. If the arrow has an up or down arrow, it means that it has been raised or lowered by 0.5. However, when comparing 3.5 with a descending arrow in 3rd tier and 3.5 with an up arrow in 4th tier, you can understand that the higher 3.5 of the 3rd tier descending arrow is higher. So, let's get started. Tier 4 is Swordmaster and Defender. The reason for Tier 4 is that the attack speed is very slow and the variety of skills is lacking. Since the existing Tier 1 characters do not have skills F and Ultimate, and only have 2 skills, they are set to Tier 4. I think the most minus factor is that there are only 2 skills. Tier 3.5 is Arcane Mudge and Guardian. The reason Arcane Mudge is Tier 3.5 is because of its long-distance basic attack and decent attack speed. However, since it is a Tier 1 character, which is a disadvantage of Tier 4, there are only 2 attack skills. However, since it is a long-distance character, users who are new to WorldZero use it a lot in the beginning, and the character difficulty is also very easy. Also, since it is a long-distance character, the fact that auto is possible is a plus. Here is the Guardian. The reason Guardian is Tier 3.5 is because of its unique slow attack speed. Compared to Tier 4 characters in the performance tier table, the damage is of course high, but compared to other characters, it is remarkably low. The skill also has high damage, but the attack speed and casting speed are slow. Of course, when using the Guardian's unique skill, Provocation, it tends to be used by beginners even though it is a low tier thanks to the 70% damage reduction. Guardian's ultimate skill is a skill that binds and slows debuffs on mobs within range and drops a great sword from the sky to inflict damage. However, the speed at which the great sword falls is very slow and the judgment is very poor. The slow fall of the great sword is not a big problem for catching mobs that can hardly move with restraint and slow debuffs, but it is a minus factor in that the judgment is really bad. Tier 3 characters are Elementalists and Paladins. Paladins have a good basic attack speed, a tanker, a heal that heals party and themselves, and good damage. In addition, if you use Paladin's unique ability F skill and ultimate skill, you will acquire the light sword buff. During this time, it has the effect of increasing attack damage and attack range, which is a plus in this respect. There is also a skill that reduces the damage received by 80% and reflects part of the attack through the E skill. It has healing powers, but not much healing. Therefore, the reason I set it to Tier 3 was that the damage, healing ability, and tanker were in compliance, but I didn't feel that something was outstanding, so I set it to Tier 3. Paladin Ultimate is a skill that summons a shield to protect yourself and teammates within range, obtains the Sword of Light buff for 15 seconds, and gains a defense-enhancing buff. Elementalist is an upgraded version of Arcane Mudge, has a very long attack range, uses fire, ice, and lightning skills, and because it is a floor plan, it takes a lot of damage when overlapped. However, the reason for setting it to Tier 3 is that it is a type of floor, so it is strong only when there is a condition that the mob must large or not be moved. If the mob is small, or moves very fast, the Elementalist will do nothing. Elementalist's ultimate freezes the enemy, then summons numerous meteors to deal damage. Since the ultimate skill is also a floor, if you use all skills at once, including the ultimate skill, you can extract tremendous damage. Tier 2.5 character is Demon. Demon was originally a new concept character that could switch between single and multi with each skill, but after the renewal, it is a character that has secured the strengths and weaknesses of both characteristics. The basic attack uses a medium range basic attack, not long range or close range. Attack speed is slightly faster. When using the current E skill, the user's HP decreases, but the damage increases by about 30%. The R skill is a Sith throw, which throws a Sith like a boomerang, but the range is extremely large. F skill is a HP recovery skill, but it recovers gradually, not immediately, but it is unfortunate that the recovery amount is very small. Another advantage of Demon is that Dash can jump the farthest of all characters in WorldZero. Damon's ultimate skill is Demonization. When used, transforms into a demon for 20 seconds and inflicts curse damage within an area. All attacks are strengthened in this state. The reason why I set Demon to tier 2.5 is that it seems to be better than tier 3 in the performance tier table, but despite having too many buffs and renewals, I set it to tier 2.5 because the performance is at this limit. Archer was originally the only character capable of moving shots in WorldZero. However, as all the wizard-type characters were able to use moving shots, they received the first indirect nerf. Also, a few months after that, I received an official perfect nerf, so I set it to tier 2 because I was very disappointed that it was a tier 1 character. It's a pity, but it's still a good and strong character, but it doesn't seem to be able to demonstrate the performance of a tier 1 level anymore. As for the skills, there are skills such as E skills penetration and damage reduce ability, R skills time bomb skill, and F skills area type skill. However, due to the nerf, the R skill can no longer attract mob aggro and has been changed to a simple slow. The range of F skill has also been greatly reduced while eating a nerf. Dash, the C skill, has a very long distance when turning backwards, and is the only offensive skill that can hit once. Unlike the ultimate system of other characters, Archer's ultimate is a method in which the gauge fills up when you catch or attack a mob, and when you press the ultimate, you attack with the number of strokes and damage you filled up. At this time, the more you fill, the more damage, range, and number of strokes increase. Warlord is an upgraded version of Paladin. E skill slams down with an axe to deal damage to nearby enemies, and at this time, E can be used up to 3 times. When 3 attacks are successful, the last 3 attacks do double damage. Our skill reduces damage taken by 90% like Paladin's E skill, and applies shock debuff and damage to surrounding enemies, longer duration than Paladin's defense. The F skill slams your shield into the ground, dealing damage and binding nearby enemies with chains. This is a scene using the R skill. The electric shock debuff is applied as follows, check it out in the video. The Warlord's ultimate summons a huge tree, which deals area damage 5 times at regular intervals and applies a debuff for 6 seconds. Therefore, when combined, it is superior to other characters in terms of performance and damage, but it is set as tier 2 because it is slightly behind compared to tier 1 in the performance tier table. Tier 1.5 characters are Dragoon, Mudge of Light, and Berserker. The Dragoon is a character who uses a spear, and when a critical occurs, it leaves an X mark on the enemy for a certain period of time. If you attack the enemy with the X mark at this time, the damage of other skills goes up a little more. E skill is to charge with a spear, and when it touches an enemy, it inflicts strong collision damage and slashes it. When killing an enemy, the ultimate skill is filled by 2%, and the total damage is the highest among the basic skills. The R skill creates multiple after images to attack, and upon critical judgment, a dragon current is created. The F skill jumps high and strikes with a spear, dealing heavy damage. Aggro does not pull until it comes down, and the drag to grow is released. In the case of Dragoons, if E, R, and F are used in order, Dragon Mode is activated for about 7 to 8 seconds. When Dragon Mode is in effect, movement speed, attack speed, power of all skills, and even critical rate are increased. Dragoon's ultimate skill is to create a huge spear and shoot it, dealing very wide damage. When it damages an enemy, it activates the Dragon Mode for about 12 seconds. If you are a Dragoon, when you catch an enemy with a skill, you can use your ultimate very quickly compared to other characters because your ultimate continues to be charged by 2%. However, the unfortunate thing is that the ultimate is not very good, the damage is weak, and the judgment is not good. Also, the biggest problem is that the skills have to be used near mobs, so the Dragoons have very weak defense. Therefore, when I tried to considering the above, it was unfortunately not suitable for Tier 1, so I set it to Tier 1.5. The Mudge of Light was originally the weakest in the dungeon like a demon, but after the recent renewal and upgrade, it has Tier 1 performance. However, the reason why I set it to Tier 1.5 is because it is a healing character, so there is no attack skill other than normal attack. Of course, normal hits are very fraudulent, stacking is also possible, so you can give high damage, but since there is no skill, it takes many time to catch HP monsters like boss battles, so it will be 1.5 tier. E-skill is a HP recovery skill, it can restore a lot of HP. Our skill is a skill that strengthens the marbles, and when the marbles are strengthened, the normal hit damage increases very much. Up to 5 marbles can be charged at a time, with a maximum of 10. Skill F is a shield, and if you use it when you are in danger or have no HP, it is equivalent to gaining a life once. When using the ultimate, instantly restores full HP and acquires a very strong shield. Berserker is an upgraded version of Guardian. All damage is very strong compared to other characters. However, it is a minus factor in very slow attack speed and skill casting speed. In addition, compared to the recently buffed characters and the Tier 0 and Tier 1 characters in the current performance tier table, there are many regrets to call them Tier 1 characters anymore. Therefore, Berserker is set to Tier 1.5. E-skill jumps up and slams the ground, dealing damage to nearby targets and pulling off a grow from nearby enemies when cast. Our skill spins 5 times while holding an axe to deal damage to enemies around you, but at this time you cannot move. Skill F slams the axe into the ground twice, the first time creating a crack in the ground, and the second time spewing lava, dealing 3x the damage of the first attack. Berserker's ultimate skill is to spread a fire on the ground and grant himself a rage buff for 12 seconds, which reduces damage by 50% and strengthens overall skills. Our skills create a fire on the ground when used, and F skills create additional meteors when used. Tier 1 characters are, as everyone expected, Dual Wielder and Summoners. Dual Wielder is the character with the fastest basic attack speed in WorldZero. In addition, the dependence on the pet is very high, and when used with the damaged pets Red Lion and Black Butterfly, you can extract the strongest damage. Skill E is a buffing skill that increases your attack speed to the maximum and grants a buff that doubles your critical rate for 4 seconds. At this time, if you catch a mob while the buff is on, 3 seconds per monster, lasts up to 12 seconds. Can recover time. Our skill rushes and slashes the opponent, dealing damage, sometimes flying into the sky to troll. The F skill fires an X-shaped sword and inflicts very strong damage to the target it hits. It is a skill that can penetrate and has many hits. However, the direction is not adjustable, so it is sometimes used in strange places. The ultimate deals damage 28 times with the effect of throwing swords at the target in front. Summoner is a character whose main focus is summoning, a new concept in WorldZero. The basic attack fires a long-range orb just like the Mudge. Skill F fires a laser forward and summons a purple sphere in place of the hit target. Mobs inside the sphere receive additional damage, the sphere disappears and a small purple sphere flies towards the player to recharge their souls. Summons are summoned at the level appropriate for your weapon, and after being summoned, attack the nearest enemies for 10 seconds. You can use the R skill to self-destruct a summoned animal, and if you self-destruct, it deals damage to the surroundings. Usually, after 9 seconds after summoning a summoned beast with E, if you explode it at the moment that does not exceed 10 seconds, you can inflict very strong damage to the enemy. The ultimate summons a giant minion, which lasts much longer than a normal minion, has more health, has a wider range, and has much more damage. However, it does not explode with the R skill, and the level of the summon is set to weapon level plus 10. Tier 0 is, of course, Shadow Blade. Shadow Blade is a character that can be obtained after 4 Prestige and is a new class released on March 24, 2023. Shadow Blade is excellent in all aspects, such as damage, attack speed, range, utility and buff, ultimate, dash, etc. The normal hit is a bit slower or similar to Dual Wielder, but of course it's fast enough to be comparable to any other character. If you activate the E skill, Cloak of Shadows, not only will the enemy not be able to detect you, but your movement speed will be faster than mount riding speed. When using Shadow Cloak, the first damage is 100% guaranteed to be a critical hit, and the damage is increased by 20%. The Shadow Cloak can be stacked with normal attacks and all skills. Also, since it can be stacked with the mount, you can experience nuclear speed if you activate the skill and ride the mount at the same time. Our skill is a Shadow Leap that teleports behind the enemy and inflicts a critical hit. Skill F is a Shadow Strike that rotates in a circle to deliver a critical hit that deals damage 6 times, but since it can move, the range is ridiculously large. Also, the dash is also a dash with a sophisticated design, and it not only goes around 1 turn, but it is as long as the Demon Dash class, which is said to be the longest in WorldZero. The Shadow Blade ultimate slams the sword into the ground and strikes fear into all enemies within its radius, dealing significant damage. Also activates Extended Shadow Mode, the same effect as the Shadow Cloak for 15 seconds. If you want to know more about Shadow Blade or see the details of the skill, check out the pinned comment below. That's all for today's video. A lot of time, effort, and sincerity went into making this video different from other videos, even when viewed by viewers. If the video was helpful or you learned new information, please give me a like for the information feed. As a bonus, if you subscribe and leave a comment on notification setting, it will be very helpful for making the next video. WorldZero information is always with Pro YouTube. Thank you to the viewers who always watch the video.